Calaroga Shark Media.
Last day of August, Johnny Mac Summers got about 18 seconds and one timeout left on the clock. And hello, I am Johnny Mac. I like my summers. I'm running out of time. Marc Maron talked to Newsweek. They asked Maron, what is it about progressives and liberals that make him a good source for comedy? Maron said, I think I stated pretty clearly the problem is there's no real unified left. There's centrist Democrats, some lefty Democrats, they want things to be okay. But this idea that the left has an agenda, it's a very fragmented business, and there's no unifying principle where everybody's all on the same page in terms of how we do this. People lock into their causes, and they get righteous about it. But does it do anything in the big picture? I don't know. The problem with the left is all the infighting, and everybody's arguing about what should be platforms, what's more important. And I dealt with that years ago at Air American stuff. I wasn't going to Bill Maher it and accuse them. I do it in a lighthearted way, but I'm not an anti-woke person. I do think there's some fun poking to be had at people that are overly committed to very small things, and that's what justifies their political existence. I thought that was right for comedy. And I think that line, which I came up with like 2 days before I shot the special, that we annoyed the average American into fascism, I was so happy I got that line. I think that says it all. And I think the way I ride the line with that stuff is that progressives and liberals can see themselves in what I'm saying and take themselves down a notch. Website findthatpod.com put out an article called Best Episodes of WTF with Marc Maron. Now, this is from March, so they had done this anyway outside of Marc announcing the podcast was ending. They flag episode 67 with Robin Williams, the Louis C.K. from 2010. Both of those stuck behind a paywall. Episode 613 with President Barack Obama. I personally consider that the best podcast episode of all time, and use it in my college class as an example of how podcasting can be great. Now, what do you mean by that, John? If you listen to the episode, when Obama shows up, he's the president. Hello, Mark, good to see you. And he's all on his talking points. But somewhere about 20 minutes in from memory, President Obama becomes Barack, and they just start having a normal conversation for a while. Now, towards the tail end, the president comes back, gets his talking points in. But if you've never listened to Obama Maron, it is fantastic. The conversation covers college, identity, race relations, gun violence, challenging the status quo, letting down supporters, comedy, fatherhood, and facing fear. I always thought Obama should have gone hard on the gun violence in his last term, but he did not. I bring that up because I first made that opinion when listening to that episode. It also spotlights Norm Macdonald from 2011. Episode 190, Todd Hansen. Who's that? I don't know either. One of the original writers for The Onion. That's interesting. They also like 568 with Mike Judge, 669 with David Spade, 1030 with Stephen Colbert, 1453 with Murphy, 1143 with Seth Rogen, 1239 with Quentin Tarantino, 1271 with Jane Goodall, 801 with Anne Hathaway and Amy Mann. The Gallagher episode, which apparently doesn't have a number, but that's from 2011. Their discussion on comedy language and cultural tolerance eventually led to Gallagher walking out, making that the first and only time that has ever happened on WTF. I might have to go grab that one. That's a good tip here. They also like episodes with Josh Brolin, Andrew Garfield, Larry King, John Oliver, Mavis Staples. There's a long list, guys. I know there's 1,000 episodes, but you got to narrow this down a little. Bradley Whitford, Bill Hader, Lin-Manuel Miranda, David Harbour, Shatner at age 92, Brad Pitt and Leo DiCaprio, Hugh Grant, Sebastian Stan. This is too many. Findthatpod.com. Mel Brooks, Conan, Gaffigan, his fifth visit, episode 573, Peter Dinklage, and that's the end of the list. That was too long, guys, but I'll grab some of those. I've actually been putting a bunch of Marons on my phone in case they decide to start paywalling everything or the episodes disappear. Zarna Garg told Fox News Digital, this is a country that looks at a person like me and says, we want to hear what you have to say. That must have been interesting for Zarna Garg to say to Fox News that this is a country that looks at a person like her and says, we want to hear what you have to say. Fascinating. Zarna said, my whole life I did in India what is called talking back to your parents. We were like, oh, you're a Weisenheimer? So that was my life. I remember my dad, when I was very little, before I'd ever stepped foot in America, he used to be like, who do you think you are, an American woman? Because all bad ideas back then came from America. I remember getting off the stage and thinking, is it possible this is my thing? When she got into stand-up, I couldn't believe people found my observations funny. I couldn't believe that anybody wanted to hear what I had to say about anything. My whole life, people have been trying to shut me up. So that was a real revelation that up on stage, I could be saying all these random, really minute observations that I made my whole life, and that people would be excited to hear what I had to say. Again, she told Fox News. None of what I'd be doing would be possible back home as I Makes America America. I'm like a middle-aged mom of three with a weird outfit and an accent, and here I am being asked what I have to say on Fox News. This is a country that looks at a person like me and says, we want to hear what you have to say on Fox News. Fascinating. Adam Sandler spoke to Vulture about writing the song on SNL 50. Sandler said, I think we were talking about it for a few months. We knew the 50th was coming, and Lawrence had to do something, and we were trying to come up with an idea. We were chipping away at it. We weren't excited enough. We'd remind the other writer who was going to be there, and we're like, oh, we better kick some butt for everybody. The audience is pretty amazing, so we're like, let's rethink it for a second. We went into a little office and jammed on it. It was the best. It was fun. We were both coming up with good stuff. When we were on stage, it was the most surreal feeling to look out and see who was there and feeling that energy. I had the thing where you sometimes do when you do stand-up, where you do a talk show, whatever, your mind is kind of talking to yourself while you're performing. Your brain's saying, is your mouth dry? You better get this out. This is a live event. You better cruise through this. Then it kind of clicked in. Vulture talked about Adam Sandler's SNL songs. They seem to like them. They may be insane. Their opinion is they're funny. They land on the side of being sweet and earnest rather than cynical. Sandler said, I definitely like when that happens. I can't guarantee every time we write a song that's going to have a sweetness, but we feel good when we come up with something like that and it has a different style of connection. I don't sit down and say, let's do one like that. I remember being at the show and going, I haven't done a song in a month and a half or so. Maybe it's time to write one. I'd sit and jam with a couple of the writers, come up with whatever we came up with. I'll never forget that I did that Red Hooded Sweatshirt tune and Paul and Linda McCartney were part of it. Imagine getting to do that and call home and tell your family you just sang with those two. That was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. The Guardian caught up with the guys from Auntie Donna, the Australian sketch comedy guys. They had a thing on Netflix during the pandemic that I liked a lot, and I listened to their podcast, which is fun. Broden Kelly is one of the Auntie Donnas and said, comedy's like an orchid. It needs the perfect conditions to grow. Therefore, Auntie Donna established Grouse House, a YouTube platform to support up-and-coming comedians. That way, the up-and-comers can leverage Auntie Donna's existing fan base rather than getting stuck in the weeds of promotion and distribution. That's pretty awesome. Broden Kelly said, we could feel the writing was on the wall with network comedy in Australia. There are two that do it, Channel 10 and ABC 2, but it's the Lord of the Rings-style Odyssey stuff to get commissioned. Our experience is that when we were given the green light to either go make a pilot or proof of concept, it needed to be everything to everyone and would receive heavy rounds of notes. In 2023, the Australian ABC screened the six-part series Auntie Donna's Coffee Cafe, but the viewing numbers were eclipsed by one sketch shot over a few hours for $500, which Auntie Donna uploaded to YouTube. Broden Kelly said, you got to forget what 14-year-old you would want for your career because all we wanted was an ABC 2 show. By the time we got one, we put it on a platform that was inept and did a bad job of promoting it. So what kind of things might you see on Grouse House? There's a show called So You Want to Win a Penis Pump. It is described as what happens if you leave Taskmaster and Game Changer too close to the heater and they melt. Guests include Paul F. Tompkins. That actually sounds pretty funny. And the Toronto Guardian profiled comedian Owen Farewell. Owen says, I like to be real, direct, not animated, just telling stories. A lot of people say comics are the people who say what everyone is thinking, but that's not the point. I like to say what no one is thinking. Favorite comedian growing up? Patrice O'Neal and Louis C.K. Who's your favorite comedian now? Shane Gillis. Pre-show ritual? I get a crappy hot dog truck hot dog, listen to 2000s rap, and take the subway. Man, those hot dogs are good, though, no matter how crappy. What's your favorite bit? My favorite bit is about bedbugs on the subway. I've seen some crazy stuff on the subway, but I've yet to see a bed. How are these guys getting there? I think we should go easy on them. It took me months to learn how to ride the subway. Let's lay off the creatures that live in literal beds. This is my favorite bit because it never fails to make me chuckle on stage, and my own humor is my only real way of judging these. That's Owen Farewell, and that is your comedy news for today. August is over. See you tomorrow.